вопрос о том, где мистер Путин разрешился успешно для самого мистера Путина, состоялся.
A question about where did Mr. Putin come to a final point, successfully, for Mr. Putin himself. A large meeting has taken place nearby Kremlin, right near that place where Nemtsov had been killed. I call it a meeting of mercenaries and slaves, because it has been participated by those who either got money paid, and no one is especially hiding it, the distribution of that money to anyone, or slaves who got forcibly involved. Well, maybe they are not refusing too much, because it allows them to skip a working day, or establish relationships with their direct employer, now that the higher managements demand from governmental authorities to bring many more people to the place, including students, whom extracted from studies by entire faculties. The main thing here is to organize a crowd scene. No one cares, either, to what extent it is spiritualized with some common idea, or whether or not the participants, that over there, are driven by their true heart calls. The main thing is to create an image, and later on to show that false image on television, as if the whole nation was there on the 18th of March, celebrating the first anniversary since reunion between Crimea and Russia. There only half of Moscow came, that's it. But actually, to the vast majority of Russian citizens it does not matter anymore, whether Crimea is with Russia, or not. And that majority leaves with a sensation of, only if there was no war. Putin of course deserves an atta girl. It is great that he has implemented the accession of Crimea, honor, and praise. Now that is why he has a rating of 90%. Sociological surveys, as ask so reply, do the people support the accession of Crimea? Yes. Supposing there is a voting, on the nearest Sunday, about who shall become the president in the next political period, people also respond that of course Putin. But if you even dare to answer differently, most will stay away from risking by giving another answer, or an opposite reply. Therefore the closer the rating is to 100%, the nearer the collapse of Putin's regime. I think that people just stopped believing that you can criticize this authority and stay unpunished, hence, people prefer to wait until it collapses by itself, when it starts consuming itself. Well, actually it has already started. And when Mr. Putin disappeared for a few days, everybody wondered what would be next, sort of a nightmare. If Putin disappeared, so what would happen next? Maybe he would be replaced by his doubles, and they said that for the whole week or even 2 weeks, that the double's face was customized and brought closer to that of the original, with relevant surgeries, plastic cosmetic, I do not know what else. Was it Putin who came out publicly on 18th of March 2015? Many think that not, they even say that his earform was not the same. Approximately the same funny arguments were also brought about Yeltsin, whom allegedly died in 1996, before the second tour of presidential elections, and then his double was ruling. There is no difference for us. In general it is not very interesting for us. Who is Mr. Putin, either, is the same Putin who was with Sobchak, and who was involved in the putsch, and takeovers of the government at the level of a small official. Or, is the same Putin who came to power as a result of provocations with buildings explosions in Moscow and Volgodonsk, or maybe, is the same Putin who is the double of the same Putin who was before that? No, seriously, it is not much interesting us. We are interested in current regime, that tortures our country, and which of course, must be stopped, so that the country could continue its historical existence. Preferably that this will be bloodless, peacefully, legally. But, to us, legal ways are always shut down by this state regime. They know that they are corrupt thieves, criminal and illicit, hence, by all methods including the illegal ones, they are destroying the ethnic Russian movement, since we are their main enemy, whereas liberals and communists are not their enemies. These are the opposition of Her Majesty. Like in Great Britain, there is an opposition that operates under the political regime that was formed, so we also have it, the opposition of His Majesty, which do not disputes the legality of rising to power by Putin and the oligarchical groupment. The opposition exists during this government, and gets from it their gingerbreads, as the ability to perform a meeting in central Moscow, or the ability to be present at State Duma, or to promote their candidates, or to move from the ranks of the opposition somewhere to governor's posts, and president's administration.
в администрацию президента, в помощники президента, на какие-то министерские должности.
And ministry positions, these people are not in opposition, these are just political structures, which create a boost to another betrayers and traitors that are just play-acting opposition, and by this, cheat their citizens. It does not matter to us what happened to Putin, we may answer the question of what did happen to him, alike as he did once regarding the submarine Kursk. Putin said, it sank. We may also say, Putin sunk, where he drowned, how he drowned, it did not matter to him, how the submarine, as if, sank, maybe he even knew, that it did not sink, but was sunk, as result of a torpedo attack, he just hid these circumstances, and therefore he answered so briefly, on an American's correspondent question, that submarine Kursk, allegedly sank. What happened to Putin? Drowned somewhere? Well, we do not care if Putin drowned, or stayed in his place. Bad words, about living dead man or about dead living man, we will not be saying. I will just simply provide a quote pad, of Putin's speeches by Maxim Kalashnikov. It is such a short and incomplete one, but maybe there is a need to compile a collection someday, and publish what Putin spoke. Here is what he said. In which epical important event, of the country's past, you would have took part in? He got questioned once. Putin answered, in the February Revolution of 1917. It means, in a conspiracy, in a putsch, which occurred as a result of the conspiracy, and in destruction, of a legitimate reign, of the reigning emperor, in destruction of the monarchy, in destruction of the historical Russia. Actually it is a confession of Putin being a pretender, like those February putschists, who destroyed the Russian Empire, destroyed the government in the Russian Empire, and afterwards, everything started to crumble. Later, the slaughterers, that were financed, by the German general staff, came out of their underground hiding, and devastated those who, accomplished the February putsch. We of course, do not need the replacement, of one imposter group by another, we need a legitimate, ethnic Russian reign, only an ethnic Russian government, will be legitimate, it will continue the history of Russia, both imperial, and Soviet, but, in the part in which both were specifically ethnic Russians. Ethnic Russian history must be continued. Next what Putin spoke. My main life university, is the time while I was working with Anatoly Sobchak, and under his leadership, precisely at that time, I have formed the basic principles of attitude towards work, duty, towards people. Sobchak was not only a seemly and a solid individual, but very decent, and I surely know that, therefore I may speak about it with complete certainty. When an individual takes a fundamentally honest position, others can feel it. We know Sobchak, as a partaker in the putsch, as one of the theoretics of that putsch, which occurred in Russia in 1991. We know Sobchak as a thief, who was hiding himself beyond the borders of the country, in order to escape justice. And we know him as a dishonest individual. We know about his ride to Tbilisi when there occurred the bloody events, and instead of telling the truth about them, he actually dodged them. As being the head of the parliamentary commission which was sent there, he avoided from telling the truth, that the breaking of the country is taking place, that occurs an action, which foreseen by some backstage scenario, in order to divide our country. Sobchak was a partaker of this dissection, was a state criminal, and if Vladimir Putin orients, specifically on Anatoly Sobchak as his teacher, then probably, the pupil is not better than his educator. We may appropriately assume, that Putin can rule only during the putsch regime, only during imposture regime. How little do people know about Putin? Many just do not understand what happens in Russia. It is awfully bad, and we need to open people's eyes, to remove the pall from their eyes, so they could see, that the false emperor Putin has no clothings. Putin is a liar. We see it well, we know in details what indeed happened, and aware of what is happening now, and who rules us. It is a groupment of desperate Russophobes, desperate robbers, and desperate traitors, the most latest rascals. Next what Putin spoke. The transition from planned economy and socialistic moralities, on, to a moral which is based on eternal values. This process is complicated, especially if it is associated with quick enrichment, of a separate group, or specific individuals. By the society it is perceived painfully and negatively. That means what is accepted painfully and negatively, is set by Mr. Putin as the heart of his policy, and he implements that in real life. hence the enrichment of a small group of individuals, is Putin's goal. Putin is an appointee of that oligarchical groupment, and a guarantor of its power which tramples the law. Chechenians has done many mistakes, but what he did, had to be done by somebody. They have changed the whole structure of the Russian economy and the development trend. These people had the courage onto the transformation. It means that Putin and Chechenians actually are the same individual. No, serious, only maybe Chechenians got his face refurbished and reshaped a little bit, and it became the face of Vladimir Putin. We cannot surely say it now. Either a double has appeared in Putin's role with the spirit of Chechenians, or it is a different individual. The main thing is that they both have completely the same orienting points. As to devastate our country, to rob it, and to hand over our strategic interests into the hands of the worldwide oligarchy, this is the activity of Vladimir Putin and his groupment. Just like that, to claim indiscriminately, without distinguishing, that this individual is a criminal, that he stole something, this is not fair, this is not right, and we will not be doing that. It is Vladimir Putin, while speaking in 2013, was advocating Mr. Chechenians like that. Chechenians and the government have performed a privatization. I thank them for that. They did a tremendous job. Today it is not fair to condemn them. Rus Nano of course has had missteps, but it is not criminality, nor thievery. Well yes, when thievery acquires cosmic sizes, it is not thievery anymore. These people who rob our country, they do not even sense that they are thieves. They know that they have robbed the country, but consider themselves as if saviors, who were allegedly sent upon us, in order to save us. It means they think they are saving us, while they are robbing us. It is their twisted out brain state. We probably need to twist aside those heads with their brains, in order to prevent from their brains to brainwash our brains. I have very good personal relationships with Bush. He is a trustworthy partner, a man of honor, decent and a good comrade. It means that a desperate enemy of not only ethnic Russian people but of all Russian citizens in general, who repeatedly has shown an enmity towards our country and nation, this one here is the most honest friend, almost the best friend and comrade of Mr. Putin. This Putin's saying also discloses his connections with the worldwide oligarchy, as known as the globalists. Americans, with the help of Hollywood, have formed the consciousness of a few generations, by injecting into them the worst values. From the social morality's point of view, there is a lot to learn here. Filthy Hollywood, here is what we need to accept, that Vladimir Putin will be using the same methods, to muddy our people's minds. We need to understand that the filthy Hollywood has formed Vladimir Putin himself. He is filthy Hollywood's product in flesh. He has studied there from Hollywood individuals, used the services of those who have formed the consciousness of the Americans, and of those who as well have formed the consciousness of Russian citizens, of a whole generation or even 2 generations. Vladimir Putin and his company instill and cultivate the slavish subordination towards the boss authority, which is no longer neither ethnic Russian nor national, but both are anti-ethnic Russian and anti-national, and anti-patriotic as well. I can hardly imagine NATO in the role of Russia's enemy. There is nothing wrong with their temporary residency on a Russian territory. Long shall they live, let them work. Handing over our territory into the hands of NATO is one of the outcomes of Putin's activity. One of his targets is NATO on a Russian territory, even despite the fact that relationships with the West now became extremely escalated. However, NATO still stays on a Russian territory. Vladimir Putin thinks long shall NATO live. That military political groupment, that bombed and annihilated the sovereign Yugoslavia, Serbia, and which always has been set with hostility towards us, and against our country. Vladimir Putin thinks long shall they live, let them work. Ahmat Kadyrov, with dignity and courage did his duty to his people, Chechenians. He was so heroic individual. This one here, a jihadist, and a mass murderer, is so-called a heroic individual. This saying of Putin also discloses his inner world, where criminality is an act of bravery, where activity against Russia is something worthy, and the behavior of literally a retarded is an act of fearlessness. We and Putin have directly opposite evaluations, directly opposite meanings of those words which we use in the Russian language, or we shall say ethnic Russian language instead. He does not have ethnic Russian judgments, nor ethnic Russian visions about the meaning of these words. Hence, in this regard he is not an ethnic Russian but anti-ethnic Russian individual, a Russophobe. He says one thing but thinks totally another. Whenever we pronounce these words, honor, courage, dignity, we think about one thing, Putin thinks about completely another. Do not believe a single word he says. This Putin's quote pad clearly has not enough of his speeches about the slogan, Russia is for ethnic Russians. Putin said that this slogan is pronounced either by provocateurs, or by fools. It means we all are, in the ethnic Russian movement, ethnic Russian patriots, national patriots, true Orthodox Christians, and nationalists, either provocateurs or fools. But we think that provocateurs and fools are ruling our country right now, and Vladimir Putin what has said about others, actually had determined about himself. We believe that he is as such, because Putin's Russia is not for European ethnic Russians, but for foreigners instead. It would be great, if idiocy dies out, in our people's minds. Too much of it has been stored already, so many idiots we have. Sergei Dorenko, in the broadcast of the radio station Moscow Speaks, has conducted a poll of the listeners, about how would they react to the idea of a nuclear weapon utilization, in the struggle for Russian Crimea, if someone puts a hand on it. 62% of the radio listeners have approved the nuclear weapon utilization, in case of trespassing into Crimea. Maybe they will strike on Ukraine with a nuclear weapon, or maybe whenever Ukrainian punishers enter the territory of Smolensk region, Kursk region for example, so now we may apply a nuclear strike on our own territory, or what? This idiocy here, the involvement itself in this poll, and the appearance itself of that kind of survey, both prove a heavy frailty in people's minds. After organizing the murders, in Donetsk and Luhansk, Putin on the meeting suddenly remembers that ethnic Russians and ethnic Ukrainians are one nation. So what did you do the last 15 years? Query. Was it said about it somewhere? No. Only now, when these tragical events have occurred, Putin suddenly started remembering about the ethnic Russian nation, and about that ethnic Russians from Russia and ethnic Ukrainians from Ukraine, indeed, both come from the same ethnic Russian root. But in reality he does not care. If he cared, he would say about it long ago. Yet he even started to pronounce the word ethnic Russian, with ease, probably only in the past 6 months, both that he does it extremely rarely, yet he is saying that he always protected the ethnic Russian nation, but no, he never protected it. He always has been its first and last enemy. He just did not express his hostility in words, yet did express it in deeds. Moreover in lack of deeds too. Now, he is performing at the meeting, and trying to speak about the ethnic Russian nation, but before that moment, he even forgot that the ethnic Russians exist, or remembered them only as a force which might overthrow him, and which might encroach on his power. And now he is trying to flirt with the ethnic Russian nation. I hope that the ethnic Russian nation will understand everything correctly, and finally, when sees it clearly, when time comes, it will evaluate Putin's activity, and this evaluation will be as unpleasant as his predecessors, his patron, his favorite, Boris Yeltsin's evaluation, to whom the people gave what is deserved, by their evaluation. Whilst our enemies are getting joy, we should not be having fun. We need to start thinking why others having fun. Maybe they are silly, or maybe they do not understand the situation in which they are. Maybe we should tell them about the catastrophic situation that we live in, and to bring them closer to understanding, that if we do not change the situation in Russia, and if in Russia is not established an ethnic Russian government, so the ethnic Russian history would be over, and it would be finished by our current generation. If this generation submits itself to that false charm of Putin and his groupment, in fact a Chabayist groupment, so it would be a catastrophe to the following generations. Now this is strongly not desirable for us.